now.
Okay.
All right. So I have.
Oh,
Oh,
wait, camera off. Happen.
it's okay. It's okay. I have Joy. You are the founder of the control group, right?
Yeah, I started this back in April of this year, 2019.
So tell people what you do and what you're about, first of all, so we can.
Okay, we are against vaccination mandates. And now that we've been collecting the data for some time now and can honestly say that we are the world's leading authority on health data for entirely unvaccinated people, i.e., controls. True controls are people that have never been exposed to whatever it is you're studying so that you can compare. And so we've been collecting health data on entirely unvaccinated people. It's randomized. We're getting these surveys in from all over the country, and also quite a few coming in from other countries as well. And less than 1% so far of entirely unvaccinated children and adults have any health problems at all. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so when you compare that with our national disease rates for all of these diseases, you can't help but come to the conclusion that the number one killer of mankind today, not only in the United States but in other nations as well, appears to be direct injection.
Yeah, and I think we'll elaborate more on that in this interview because I think that's kind of hard for some people to wrap their heads around at first.
It was for me.
Because yeah, and it took me a while to understand that, right? And it's like just out of curiosity too. Are you also taking data from pets, unvaccinated pets?
No, that's a little too broad. I mean,
Okay.
it is an interesting subset, and there are more and more veterinarians speaking out about that. But we're just focused on the humans right now.
No, I know, and I mean it's. I just thought that I brought that up because I just come across a study the other day talking about how vaccinations has been found to cause cancer in cats, or
Yeah,
they linked it. I mean,
interestingly enough, we don't have any cancers in the unvaccinated children
oh
uh,
wow,
in our study. We're talking zero. And this is in a nation where cancer is now the leading cause of death by disease in our children in the
yeah,
United States.
yeah,
And if you're unvaccinated, you're basically immune. So somebody sent me something concerning research that shows that if you've had measles, chickenpox, or mumps, or all of the above as a child, you're less likely to get cancer, and that they're suspecting that there's something protective about having had these childhood diseases that prevents cancer. And then I just thought about it for a second. I went, wait a minute, maybe people who officially get diagnosed with measles, mumps, or chickenpox as a child are maybe the real thing is that they just didn't get vaccinated, and that's why they're not having cancer.
Well, you know what, too? I have some stuff
Yeah.
that I've collected, and I'll send you on that too. The mainstream even knows this because they're making a vaccine for cancer using
Yeah.
measles. It's like that's their like the vaccine causes the issue, but yet they're like, oh, let's solve the problem with the vaccine. Like it's
Another
ridiculous.
vaccine.
Yeah,
All the money is in vaccines now.
yeah.
It's liability free. It's got they don't have to do safety testing the way they do with normal drugs. So as soon as they classify it as a biologic, it's just all profit. It's all money. No downside, no risk to them for liability. And the bigger picture here that really horrifies me is that the people at the very, very top of these programs that are pushing them are actually interested in depopulation. And they're very
Right.
open about it.
Yeah, and I know it's like You know, it took me a while to get to that point because I would hear people say that when I first went down this road. I was like, what? I was like, no, they just want money. But after you figure out how much money, I'm like, okay, how much money can be made? Oh, people are dying. Oh, they don't care. People are dying and they don't care. I just came across something I posted on our Facebook page showing that I forgot which vaccine, but they knew this was like in the 50s that they knew that it was causing cancer, and they knew for a while, and they still just let it let people still get it. You know, you have to think about, like, either they're really stupid or they know exactly what they're doing. That's my deal.
Yeah, it's and there's no way they're that stupid. I can't get past the fact that the doctors doing the injecting are the first ones to get the call from the emergency room. They're the first ones to get the call from the parents when the child has a reaction or dies. So there's no part of me anymore that believes that these doctors don't know, especially when you start looking at the bigger numbers here.
Well, what about, but the doctors too, they're doctors that do get burned too because they believe in vaccination and they vaccinate their own kids and their own kids die or their own kids become autistic or brain damaged.
Pediatricians of any profession in the nation, pediatricians specifically, have the lowest rate of vaccination for their own children.
Oh, what?
Yeah, so there's no way they're just all dumb. This is a well-oiled money-making machine. One single pediatrician can earn up to $1.7 million in extra income per year for maintaining a perfect vaccination rate in his practice. So maybe when they first started, they were not aware. But then by the time the numbers start stacking up and they start really firsthand seeing the damage, they're so dependent on the money now. They've got the Mercedes payments and the new house payment.
And they're in debt from college and med school.
College is coming up. And they get a little more concerned about their own happiness and their own financial life than the health and safety and lives of their own patients. That's what I think happens.
You know, there was I'm making notes as you're talking because I know I know that there are a lot of people that watch this channel and they kind of know, but there are the other people that don't. So I'm trying to get some references together so they can look into what we're saying. So the doctors get paid through the insurance. They have to have a certain amount of the people in their practice vaccinated. So like 60, 70% to get the whole bonus, and then like per patient. Right. So if you have a lot of patients, you can per year at the end of the year that, you know, have got all their vaccinations and you have a certain percentage vaccinated, then you can get that bonus. But what was that doctor? We were talking to him about him. I think I think it was Bob Sajak, where he was saying I think that's his name. He was a pediatrician and he realized what was going on, and he went back to his wife and he said, we're going to have to move into a smaller house because I can't like do this anymore. I can't, you know, kill babies basically anymore. And, you know, and he was saying, he made a lot of money just off the vaccinations alone. And if you think about the well visits, really that's what they are, is just getting the vaccinations, you know? Yeah. It's really fascinating. I think, well, you know what? I'm going to get back to the whole pediatrician thing, but I want, because we jumped the gun a little bit, I want to go back and I want you to tell people what a double-blind placebo-controlled study is, a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, why it's important and why it hasn't been done. So can we talk about that first?
So, so I think the first thing would be to establish some definitions. Scientific method, when it comes to almost anything, always requires a control. That is, a subject or group of subjects to which nothing is done that can be used as a comparison against the treated, whether it's a plant or an animal, and certainly if it's a person. You want to know numerically what the risk factors are of anything that you're going to be putting upon the public in a broad scale. So Big Pharma, and they're joined at the hips with all of our regulatory agencies like the FDA, the CDC, all of these health department, HHS, Health and Human Services, HHS. They all cooperate in covering up the truth about the controls when it comes to vaccination. They go so far out of their way, they call it unethical to see a person that's not vaccinated and not immediately vaccinate them. They say that that would be unethical, so therefore they cannot do any long-term studies for safety, because you can't just leave somebody out there that's vulnerable to all these diseases, because if you find out that they're unvaccinated, the only ethical thing to do is start injecting them, according to these people. And so what I thought was interesting was, okay, well, there are some people that no matter what you do, they're not going to voluntarily get vaccinated. They've been living as unvaccinated people for all these years anyway. So why not ask them what their health is like? Yeah. You know, that wouldn't be unethical. And not only that, how do they answer to this question? Why is it that, okay, let's say you have to inject them immediately upon stumbling upon an unvaccinated person. Why would it be unethical to look at what their health was like before you injected them?
Because they know what the answer is.
Yeah.
What was that? Did you see the Moulson study? The Moulson study, that was the homeschooling study that was done a few months ago. So you guys, there was a homeschooling that was done with homeschoolers, and they found that, like, I have to find, maybe there's a video I can find that shows, but all of the unvaccinated children were healthy, and then like all the kids that were vaccinated had a super high risk for autoimmune diseases, for allergies, for asthma, for ear infection, diabetes, all that stuff.
Yeah. So we have so back to the scientific method. That they say is unethical to apply when you're looking at vaccines. It is literally impossible to come up with a numerical risk factor for anything unless you use the scientific method, which requires controls. And so their way of sweeping that under the rug is say, well, that would be unethical, and we know that's ridiculous. Yeah. But the numbers actually don't lie. Slogans like rare that have no numbers behind them, those are lies. We're collecting the actual data, the actual numbers to compare against the national disease rates. Now, recently, we're kind of refining. There are two different lawyers that we've been talking to. One of them is Greg Glaser from Physicians for Informed Consent, which is a large group of doctors here in California. I'm not sure if they have chapters in other states, but this is the lead counsel for their California chapter. And he has also turned us on to a guy named Aaron Siri, who wants to do...
I'm sorry, that's the Plotkin lawyer. That's the guy I think the disposed Plotkin. Sorry, guys. We'll talk about that later.
It's very cool.
What?
There's more stuff. There's a famous cowboy lawyer we're talking to out of Wyoming.
God.
I mean, this case that takes the big pharma down in this way is going to be a legacy case. Whoever's attached to it doesn't have to worry about making money on it if they can just survive through it.
Right.
Because the other side of this, they're not going to be able to handle the calls they get for representation. I mean, this is a legacy case. And this is one that can be won. And that's what I'm hearing from these really powerful lawyers, is that this particular strategy is the one that will win this. All the other strategies have been anecdotal, based on things like religious rights. People don't have a basic understanding of how the chessboard is set up on the law. And so they try to get wins with things that have already lost and that are not going to win.
I have a question, though. When they say that vaccine injury, it's anecdotal. When we look at people talking about polio, that's anecdotal too, right? I mean, technically, how do they like skate past that hypocrisy? Because if you look at the data showing the people that got, that had polio before the vaccine and that the trend was actually going down, the data doesn't support the fact that there was an actual epidemic of polio, like they say it was. So, and I just want to clarify for people that are like, oh, my grandfather had polio, my grandmother. I'm not saying that they weren't sick and they weren't paralyzed, but even according to the CDC, it says 1% of people that got polio were paralyzed. It's a stomach virus. So so when you see people in braces and stuff too, and you see the video footage, it was the March of Dimes campaign. Even the Smithsonian Institute says on their own website that the picture of all the people in the room that you see in the iron lungs, they were it was staged. It was basically actors, because it was staged for the campaign. So and then I start thinking about it. Sorry, I just want to finish this. I start thinking about it, and I started asking my parents and people, because my parents had me late. So my parents are like in their mid 70s, right? So I'm like, okay, well, where are all the people that are paralyzed from polio? They should be around my parents' age. If it was an epidemic, I'm like, again, I don't want people to be like, oh, you're saying that polio did, the people did. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying epidemic means hundreds and hundreds of people should have had the disease. There should be hundreds of people that were paralyzed from polio. And then another misconception is that the vaccine cured polio, but it's a preventative. So those people that supposedly were paralyzed in droves, they couldn't be cured by the vaccine. The polio vaccine was invented to prevent people from becoming paralyzed. If that makes sense. Sorry, I just wanted to go. So the data doesn't support that. And the more I look into the polio history, it seems like it's a huge hypocrisy that people say, oh, it's anecdotal. You can say the same thing about smallpox and polio too. You know?
Yeah. Well, I want to add a quick story about that. I've got a 91-year-old mother, born in 1928. Her father was a doctor down in Tennessee. He refused to allow the polio vaccine in their city. And he grouped up with some other doctors to prevent that, because when they first started introducing it to their city, that's when people started getting paralyzed. There's something about being directly injected with it that is causing this version of it that paralyzes people. And so they ended up with the people that never got vaccinated, 0 paralyzations, at least in that city. And the only people that ended up paralyzed were the ones that got vaccinated.
The Cutter incident too. And that was Salk's vaccine.
Yeah.
Right? The guy that supposedly invented the polio vaccine. And then, have you seen that clip of him saying that the polio vaccine can cause polio?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's happened is, I mean, look at the Bill Gates Foundation thing over in India, where they paralyzed somewhere around 50,000 Indian children with their polio vaccines. Yeah. And they were going into a population that wasn't having a problem with polio.
But you know what? I think those are the oral ones, but they're still causing paralysis, because you're still putting stuff, whether it's injected, you're still putting chemicals and human DNA in people's bodies, and they're not.
There's something about the formula, the way that they're doing it, that is far more dangerous than a natural exposure that you might have bumped into, that would cause you to get polio. And like you were saying, it's 1% of the people that actually get polio that are going to have those types of complications. And you have to look at the fact that it doesn't matter what disease it is you get. If your immune system is so beat down and you don't have decent nutrition, almost any bug can kill you. I mean, we're walking around with viruses and parasites and bugs all around us all the time. Yeah. And the only thing that separates us from someone who dies from that same exact assault is that we have access to nutrition and our immune system can fight it off.
And we have better sanitation too than some of those countries. We have better sewage and
we're not crapping our water supply.
And then drinking it and doing our laundry in it. And a lot of those people, not only in the third world countries too, not only are they malnourished, but they've had generations of malnutrition because their crops have been ruined. So if you're a mother that's malnourished, you give birth to a baby, that baby is going to be even less malnourished. You're not able even through your breast milk, you're not able to give that baby the nutrition it needs. It's going to have a very impaired immune system.
Yeah, and so it keeps coming back to impairing the immune system, which is what vaccines do. They certainly don't improve anyone's health. And I like the term delayed incendiary device when you're talking about
yeah.
The fact is, the majority of people that get these shots, the majority of them don't know they've been injured until months, weeks, maybe even years later, because it can take that long for a confused and altered immune system to begin attacking your own tissues, your brain tissue.
Yeah.
So you're talking about regressive autism and all these things. Your brain's being destroyed over time, or your nervous system, and you don't know which part of your body's going to get attacked by your own immune system once it's disrupted, because they're injecting you with ground up fetal parts. I'm sorry, it's that simple. And also, so they're activating your immune system at the same time they're putting complete DNA chains in with the adjuvants.
Yeah.
So now your body is being trained. Maybe in that batch it was high on kidney cells.
Yeah.
So your body's going to go, hey, let's go attack the kidney.
Yeah.
And so it's going to recognize your own kidney or your own pancreas or whichever, and we don't know. It's a witch's brew.
Yeah, it is. I was watching some. Yeah, it is. It's like, so let me just stop and explain this. When you're creating vaccines, you can't grow them in a petri dish. You have to grow them on a cell, right? Some of them use dog kidneys, monkey kidneys, human embryo kidneys. That's what we hear about, the aborted baby fetal cells. So different either animals or live animal or human parts in order to replicate the vaccine. And usually the mainstream science also knows this too, that because they keep replicating the cells, they're increasingly becoming tumorigenic. And even the HeLa cells was made, the HeLa cells, Henrietta Lacks, who they used her cells. She actually had cancer, okay? So they're already even growing vaccines on somebody that already had cancer in her cells, and they're replicating them, and then it becomes even more tumorigenic as you replicate. Even if the person is healthy, if they replicate the cells, they become more and more tumorigenic, right?
Yeah.
And then in the, sorry, I just want to say this one last thing. In the, chicken leukemia was found in even some of the vaccines through Janie Roberts. Chicken leukemia, but you're going to inject that into a baby? Like, give me a break. And you don't think it's not going to cause cancer? Like, for real?
Yeah. Well, then you look at the fact that they're crossing species. So, we've got the avian bird flu. We didn't used to be able to catch the flu from a frickin' bird. They made that possible by injecting us with egg proteins and things from whole DNA chains from avian birds, chickens. And so, and then you've got the swine flu. Oh, that's right. They also use pig parts to make vaccines. We didn't used to have such an easy time crossing species from one to the other. And now they're injecting us with all these different animals and also plant proteins. So it's, witch's brew is an appropriate term for what they're doing. It's voodoo. And
yeah, I know.
It's worse than voodoo.
But it was but there was also, I'm making notes, the 1976 swine flu epidemic, and this was in the 70s, where they were promoting fear. Oh, you better get the swine flu vaccine. Oh, you're gonna die if you don't. Oh, it's important. People died. All the people that got vaccinated died. I mean, I'm sorry, not. Let me take that back. They didn't all die, but the people that got vaccinated some of them died. Some of them became paralyzed, got Guillain-Barré, got sick.
Yeah.
But the people that didn't take their vaccinations, they were fine.
Well, the numbers proved after the H1N1 scare not too long ago during the Obama administration, the numbers proved that if you got the swine flu vaccine, you were twice as likely to get the flu that year. So,
Wow.
you know,
I
it's,
wait. I stopped getting the flu before I even knew all this. Just common sense. I stopped getting the flu vaccine, so I was always get the flu. And the thing here's a big joke is that they don't even know what strain is going to circulate in the fall. They have to guess by no scientific method whatsoever. So they're guessing. And what the past 3 years so far, they got the strain wrong, but they're still making people get the flu shot.
well,
It's insane.
it says in the package inserts for the flu shots, there's no proof this helps you at all or prevents any disease. I mean, it says that. So
Yeah.
you're taking all these risks to inject this strange stuff in you, and there's zero evidence that it's going to prevent anything. And you know, the truth is, if they were being honest, they would put that same disclaimer on all of the rest of the vaccines, because truly there is no evidence. The only way you can produce evidence is to have controls in your studies, and they never have controls. They are guilty of fraud over and over again. They refer to people that have been injected with 3 other vaccines and or a chemical cocktail missing only the virus. And they refer to them as controls.
Yeah.
That's just a fraud.
It should be saline, right? Just pure saline, nothing else.
Well, and the thing is, we don't have placebo controls here. These people know they were not vaccinated. But I'm going to challenge anyone to try and tell me that because they believed that getting vaccinated was dangerous, that somehow not vaccinating prevented them from getting cancer or autism or epilepsy. You know, that it's just psychological. These are all psychological diseases that you only get but then again, people who get vaccinated believe that they're safe. So what about that psychology?
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea of placebo means you do something and you make them think that they got the drug, so that you can weed out that portion. But that doesn't really apply with vaccines, because it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So our people that are unvaccinated are just as psyched out maybe as people who believe that vaccines are safe and so get vaccinated. So it kind of balances out. And I'm sorry, these 6-year-old children that are getting this epidemic of arthritis now in America, they're not imagining that.
Yeah.
No, that's not a psychological problem. They've got swollen joints. And in one of the MMR shot studies where they were proving or trying to prove that it doesn't cause autism, and of course the controls were all injected with 3 other vaccines. But what they did find is that the ones that just got the MMR, fully 15% of them, actually it was higher than that in boys, ended up within 2 to 3 weeks with advanced arthritis. And they admit this. And you know what the conclusion was? Oh, let's go ahead and approve it anyway, because everyone knows measles is so much worse than childhood arthritis. Cuckoo.
Yeah, I know. It's like oh, that's me. And like measles is worse, or they'll just invent another vaccine to try and repair the damage that the vaccine already did. That's just, it's like we're living in the Twilight Zone.
Well,
it's
you know,
insane.
I've had people ask me like, well, if this is depopulation, and you know, I don't have I can't put on the screen some documentary evidence that is the purpose behind vaccine programs. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when someone asks me, well, why would they want to kill us all with these vaccines when if they kill us, then they can't make any money off of us? Okay, it's the lower management. I believe it's the lower management that are just interested in immediate profits.
Yeah.
And
it's a tier system. Kind of like you see that pyramid. I know I hate to be cliche, but like think of a pyramid, right? It's like pyramid. Yeah, it's compartmentalized. Yeah. So the people at the top, like the people that want profits, they know what the vaccines do, but they won't take the vaccines. They don't care. They're making money. But the people at the top, they know that, you know, it's going to kill a certain amount of people. It's going to maim a certain amount of people.
Yeah.
It's going to And I also think, I mean, they're experimenting a lot too. I think it's very interesting that a lot of the people that have autism, that have severe autism, are usually big, and they have they're like physically big, and they're with the Mao gene. Yeah, so there's a theory that the people that have like lower end autism, they a lot of them have the Mao gene, the warrior gene, which is called the warrior gene, and the people that have Asperger's are more physically frail, but they still have a lot of gut issues. They have depression and high suicide rates and stuff too. But the people that usually, when you hear about these autistic people, it's like Rain Man, and they're like, oh, it's a superpower and stuff like that, like those kids. But they're being, recruited to work at these companies where they're not going to question anything. They're not gonna stand up for their rights. They're going to be told what to do.
These are Twitter bots.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of interesting that it also seemed like there's some kind of methods. I think the people at the very, very top know exactly what they're doing. I think that they want to depopulate, but they also have they have a methodology to how they're doing it, because I also think that there's experimentation going on, and they're kind of, like, so you maim the warrior so they can't physically beat you up, but then you make the frail kind of nerdy bots, right, into people that you can use for your own benefit, because they can't, they can memorize, they have like one part of their brains are damaged. Both of their brains are damaged, but they're controllable because they can, memorize large sets of information and input stuff and build things without question. And you can overwork them, and you can treat them like crap, and they're not going to say anything because they also have like this OCD, so they like the what do you call, like the raiment, like they like the what do you call it, the stability. And they because they're very, like, I work with those kids. They like stability. They don't like anything. They just like very rote. So they're almost kind of like robots. I'm not saying they are. I don't really I'm not like trying to insult kids, but I'm saying like the kids that I work with, and making this observation too. The higher end autistic kids, they're very kind of like robotic in the sense that they like doing the same thing over and over again, and they don't like to deviate from their schedule or how they do things.
Yeah. Orange Jello, fish sticks.
Mm-hmm. Which are terrible for you, which makes it worse. It messes up your gut even more. I know it tastes great, but like, come on. Yeah. And then you add to that, if the immune system is damaged, you add to that like the GMOs and all that stuff. It's like it's adding more fuel to the fire,
Well, my answer to people that say why would they, or that ask like why would they actually intentionally want to kill us off, because then they don't have any customers for their products anymore. And yeah, it does come down to split management. Like the lower management's just like immediate profits, and for them it is extremely profitable, not just selling the vaccines, because that pediatrician injects that kid. Now the kid is diabetic.
Insulin.
It has this problem, that problem. They need seizure medication. They have all these other health problems. Now they're going to get to give them the ultimate expensive cure for cancer, because now they've got to get chemotherapy. So, I don't think they mind draining our wallets on our way out. I think they would prefer less of us actually do die immediately after the injections. The Harvard Pilgrim study did prove that we've actually got somewhere around 40,000 infants that die almost immediately after their injections. Now, this number was extrapolated from this is every year. Okay, so like in 2018, we lost somewhere around 43 to 45,000 infants immediately upon being injected. Now, this starts with...
Wait, I have a question real fast. Did they classify that as SIDS, or they classified it as a vaccine injury?
Okay, so that's what I was going to explain.
I'm sorry, go on. Okay.
So there's the VAERS reporting system, right? And what happened is Harvard came in and studied that reporting system, and what they determined was that less than 1% of the adverse reactions were actually being reported. So that means you can take the numbers that are in there for the deaths and for
Okay.
every other adverse reaction, and then you realize there's actually somewhere around 5 million per year actual injuries that are documented as a side effect of the vaccines. Um, Even though when it washes out, they'll call it something else later. This study proved that they just don't get reported.
Yeah.
And they were precise about it. It was less than 1% actually end up being reported. So if you take the deaths and you add another 99 to each one that's reported, you end up with somewhere between 40 to 45,000 infant deaths.
Yeah.
And that went unreported. Now, because the specific hospitals that were part of this study had these Harvard researchers in there, they couldn't really get away with calling it SIDS. They were being watched. Whereas in the rest of the country, the doctor who did the injecting, he's going to be the first one to try and help with the cover-up. No way on earth is he going to want to admit to those parents or anyone else that he had anything to do with that child's death. He's going to say it was a coincidence, or in many cases, and I've been getting calls from homicide detectives on this issue. One of them's certain to be testifying for us. She's from, I'm not going to say where she's from.
Okay.
So she gets the call from the doctors who killed the babies, because the doctors don't want to take the blame. The doctors are the ones that will call CPS and call police on perfectly innocent parents and say that this was shaken baby syndrome.
Yes.
And when their brain gets liquefied, and they have no, but this female homicide detective who called me and wants to testify, she was explaining to me that she would go out and investigate and find out that yes, indeed, in every one of these cases, these babies had just been vaccinated, and that the doctors were liars. And she would go check all the medical records and determine, I'm trained to find the killer. And in every one of these infant deaths, the killer is the needle, the doctor, the nurse, whoever put it in them.
But the pediatricians can't be sued because
related to the process of vaccines, whether it's anybody attached to the process of vaccines is immune from liability. It's not just manufacturers. But her thing is, like, she got so fed up, she's looking at the DA in her county and saying, look, here's the evidence. I mean, somebody's got to go down for these deaths. This is murder. It's intentional. And the one person you cannot prosecute is the doctor. And so then she would get calls from the parents crying and saying, the doctor also reported us to CPS. And so this homicide detective would call CPS and say, look, I've already exonerated these parents. They did not injure this child. Yeah. And the CPS would have already confiscated all the rest of their kids.
Yeah.
And CPS would not listen to this detective.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And the guys, they're parents that go to, like, they think they're doing the right thing by getting their baby vaccinated. Their baby dies, and then they go to jail for it. They go to jail. There's a documentary. I forgot what vaccine documentary, but there's a guy that was they followed this guy who actually went to jail. His baby, died after vaccine, and they, thought he was a baby killer, and he got abused. And it ruined his life. There's a documentary. It was supposed to be coming out on vaccine SIDS and the shaken baby syndrome. I saw the trailer for it a while ago, but I haven't heard anything about it since. And then there's miscarriage. There's miscarriage, sorry, for women that get vaccinated, like they have the flu. And remember when the flu vaccine wasn't recommended for pregnant women?
Yeah.
And now it's okay, and now you're seeing an epidemic of miscarriages.
Or newborns. It used to be that you didn't vaccinate newborn babies. It was just you don't do that. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, less than 20 years ago. That was standard. You don't do that. You don't vaccinate pregnant women. You don't vaccinate newborn babies. They were doing other things to newborn babies, like mercury drops, and just a lot
silver
of
nitrate.
stuff.
Yeah.
but at least they weren't injecting them the way they do now. Now it's 100%, it's like considered child abuse not to immediately inject that baby with vitamin K, which is full of aluminum, and a bunch of other crap. And now the SIDS through the roof. The infant deaths. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the industrialized world here in the United States. And what do we also have? The highest vaccination rate for newborn infants.
Yeah.
So,
but that's just a coincidence.
It's just a coincidence. And it would be unethical to compare entirely unvaccinated infants. That's another point. Our study covers, we always ask the reporting parent of children that are subjects of this study, we always ask them, have you ever lost an infant? Like, have you had an infant die? And if so, were they vaccinated? When were they vaccinated? And what was their date of death? And guess what? So far in our study, 0 infant deaths in entirely unvaccinated babies.
Wow.
Other than accident or homicide or something.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, even in unofficial studies, I know I've even seen them done in animals, and people were like, oh, that's in animal studies. But we do have a section on animals to see what happened in humans. But even in animals, I think I saw one on sheep or something. No pun intended. But a sheep that the unvaccinated were healthier than the vaccinated. It's like they were trying to, there was like an outbreak or something of some kind of animal disease for farmers. And then the ones that were vaccinated got sick, and they traced it to the ones that were vaccinated for this particular disease. And they all my friends that have, usually, let me see, I have a friend that's a nurse, and she has 4 kids, and her first child doesn't even, thank God it wasn't even as bad, but she just had a reaction, she brain damage or anything like that, but she was projectile vomiting and just immediately after vaccination. And both of her parents were like, wait, this is weird. Let us research some stuff. And then they researched vaccines. They're like, no, the 3 other kids were not vaccinated. Healthy. The only one that has minimal health problems is the first one. And she was only vaccinated maybe once or twice, but after they did their research, they stopped vaccinating her. So she's not even vaccinated that much. And my friend that has 3 kids, first 2 vaccinated, middle child is autistic, last kid, no vaccines at all, super healthy. She gets a cold, she's over it like that. She gets say the whole family gets sick and there's a cold running around the house, she'll get it, but then she'll get over it in 2 days, where the rest of the family, it takes them a week to get over.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It's insane. Families, to me, I'm just seeing it in my own life, people around me, that people who vaccinate, they just their family's just sick all the time. And their kids have things like diabetes and epilepsy and all these weird problems that aren't actually weird anymore. They're common now, which is...
all these kids having these quote-unquote old people's diseases,
Yeah, little kids with advanced arthritis. What kind of future is that kid going to have? If they're only 6 and they already have advanced arthritis, rheumatoid.
Oh, what's interesting too, you think about the people that are older people that have these problems, right? They were vaccinated, but they weren't vaccinated as much. But then you have all these kids that are getting all these vaccinated. It's like speeding up the process.
Well, and the thing is, even if you've got an old person who's never been vaccinated and they've now got arthritis, they're 90 years old,
Yeah.
That's the time when your body starts to kind of come apart naturally,
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lifespan genetically where our DNA starts to unravel and we don't replicate ourselves as fast. And that's a natural process. Yeah. And to see that type of disease now, with the brain damage, we've got now an epidemic of childhood onset Alzheimer's. Try that one on for size, right?
Yeah.
And none dare call it brain damage when you're talking about autism.
They'll call it that?
you know.
Yeah, because isn't it still, would they classify it as autism as well, as a form of autism, or no? They're calling it childhood onset.
They're calling it different things because they don't want to diagnose it for what it all is.
Yeah, it's brain damage.
Package. It's all just different types and different levels of brain damage.
But it's funny how they tell us, oh, if you drink through aluminum cans or you cook in aluminum pots, it's gonna like increase your chances of Alzheimer's. But you're injecting it, and they're asking people, or they're like forcing older people to get a flu shot every year. Oh, the elderly needs it the most. They need the flu shot. The flu shot is full of aluminum. Right? Yeah. And now they're discovering the macrophages like gobble it up like Pac-Man, and it just goes straight through our blood-brain barrier. And if I don't know if you know about the Christopher Exley.
I don't want to name names, but I've been talking to.
Okay.
Wink, wink. I've been talking to some toxicologists, one in particular that's renowned and who specializes in aluminum.
Yeah.
And he is very, very clear when he explains that when you directly inject the aluminum, you have increased the dosage by 10,000%. Mm-hmm. It might be 10,000 times. I can't remember which one it is. I'll have to go check.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I would just say it's a lot. It's not a little bit.
A lot. Mm-hmm. And the point of the beauty of having this person willing to come in and testify to stop the mandates is that pretty much all of the shots have large amounts of aluminum in them. And the argument we always get from the people pushing the vaccines is it's just a trace amount. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's only a trace amount if it's in a can of tuna or on a piece of bread, because you're ingesting it. When you inject it, and that's what we need the toxicologist on the stand in front of the jury explaining, is that when you inject it, now you've surpassed the FDA's daily safe limit by 10,000 times or percent, whichever one it is. I'll have to get that one straight. And what he will also testify to is that when you do that, it's potentially lethal.
Not only that, it's cumulative, right?
In toxicology, that is considered a potentially lethal dose of aluminum.
Wow. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up. I wanted to say, not only that, it's cumulative if you keep getting shots and they have aluminum in it, right? Because it doesn't leave the body. It just accumulates inside the body.
Sometimes I wonder if the people designing all of this, because they know all this, I wonder if they're just sitting there going, damn, we still can't kill them that fast, or they're not dying fast enough. Okay, let's add another 200 shots to the schedule, the mandated schedule. Maybe that'll finish these people, I mean, we are so resilient. The human cell on a cellular level is like 1 billion times more intelligent, just on a cellular level, than any other life form on planet. And they demonstrated this. This one study that I looked at was just amazing. They had all this variety of life where they just would have cells in petri dishes, and they would expose those to different challenges simultaneously. Human cells being exposed to the same challenges, radiation, different chemicals, heat, whatever, just different things. And for some reason, human cells come up with more intelligent, novel ways to recover from and fight all of these different assaults. It is nothing short of a miracle of the intelligence of our DNA that there's a single vaccinated person, frankly, still walking the face of this earth.
I think about that a lot. Like I honestly, like my best friend and I will talk about this stuff, and we'll just be like, it's a miracle that we're not dead. And it's actually, this is so weird, but just being kind of jaded with religion for a while, because there's a lot of hypocrisy with organized religion and stuff. So I was kind of toting that agnostic atheist line for a while, but knowing this has definitely brought me back to God, and knowing that there's like a creator. It seems like the more you know about biology, you have to be like, it's so complex and so intelligent. It's not just a random chance. Like this is, it's phenomenal. And I think about it too. Like, yeah, they must have, I think it's taken time for them to regress us, because we should be further advanced physically, intellectually, all this stuff, right? But it seems like I think about that a lot. It's on my mind a lot, that it's even a miracle that we're still like functional, that we're still alive, that we're not as impaired as we could be. And there was a guy who worked for Merck who actually made vaccines, and he came out recently to said that he quit Merck and stuff. But he made the vaccines, didn't vaccinate any of his kids.
Oh, of course not.
And all the people in Silicon Valley, they have the lowest recorded vaccination rates. In the, or some of the, I guess they're different areas of the countries, but some of the lowest vaccination rates. All these people that the scientists, the people that are in tech and stuff, they don't vaccinate their kids.
Well,
it was taken from the day centers that they send their kids to. So.
Yeah, I just read a CDC report on this very subject, where that was the study where they determined that there were somewhere around 3 million people in the United States that remain entirely unvaccinated at this time. And what they determined was, now for the ones that were unvaccinated, they were comparing their income and their level of education against vaccinated. And I think initially they probably set out to try and prove that it's like really stupid people who don't vaccinate, right? Yeah. Like broke ass, whatever, uneducated.
Ghetto people, yeah.
Just the opposite.
Yeah.
It was just the opposite. Yeah. Higher income, higher educated people are the ones that don't vaccinate. So since that was the unavoidable result of their research, they tried to twist it into, aren't these rich people
selfish?
Privileged people, selfish, to go around spreading measles on everyone else by not being vaccinated, which we know is absurd. Yeah. It's the opposite. And so then it becomes an issue of income equality.
Yeah.
We have to hate the rich people because they're so bad. And by rich, I just mean middle class. There's about you and I, people that just work in steps that can afford a house and a car. And that's who they're after.
The royal family
not going to be taxed.
The royal family uses homeopathy. I saw an interview a long time with Prince Charles, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is my homeopathy. This is like years and years ago, before this whole vaccine thing heated up and stuff. But I was like, oh really? They use homeopathy? Oh, yeah, that's why they live to like 1,000 years, right? I'm like, they just never die. They just keep on going, because they don't get vaccinated. They know better, so the uber rich, they know, the uber rich, they know better. Bill Gates probably does not. I don't have any proof that he doesn't. I'm praying for proof. That would just make the whole house of cards fall, like just solid proof that he doesn't vaccinate himself or his children. That would be great. But I'm willing to bet that he doesn't. Dr. Oz even said, do you see the Dr. Oz interview?
Vaccinate his kids.
And I wonder, he's not a stupid guy, and I think that there are people that also just get caught up. I think he was trying to kind of hint to people, and just, you don't think so? You think he really just slipped? You think he really slipped, or you think he was trying to hint to people?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. This is coming to a head. You're either good or you're evil, and you cannot serve both. There's no more room left on the fence, okay? Anyone that tries to stay in that gray area, stay in the middle, straddle the two worlds because they're afraid they're going to lose their income or whatever. Mm-hmm. That is getting so razor sharp now, that fence, that it's going to end up splitting in half anyone who tries to reside there. This is coming to a head. Yeah, the truth is all about to come out in a very big way. What we're doing with the control group, by the way, the controlgroup.org, I'm hoping you're going to put it in your description.
Yeah, I will.
All of your information on my Twitter and my description as well, because I love your channel, by the way. So that is what we're coming to in politics, in health, in all these different areas. There's no more space left. You're either going to serve good or evil. And if you try to stay in between, you're going to get split in half. You'll end up.
I like that analogy. That's a really good analogy. Yeah, I mean, I'm to that point. But I think you're right. Since people are coming to a head, let me just, when I started, I'll try and make this short just to give, but I think I told you a little bit about it. I started when I watched my best friend's child regress into autism. And then I put her in touch with my cousin because I thought I have an autistic cousin. I thought they could connect. Didn't know, because I lost touch with my cousin, didn't know that the same thing happened to her. I thought she just got autism some other way. Didn't know. Then, she tries to sue, realizes that, you can't sue. I was like, what do you mean you can't sue? This is ridiculous. So then she starts sending me all this stuff. And I'm fascinated. I joined some groups with her and we start, researching, go into one group. And then, because at that point I was like, oh, maybe it's just the MMR vaccine, right? Go into one group and then they were talking about vaccines causing asthma. Talked to my mom. I was like, yeah, I ran across this group talking about vaccines causing asthma. But that's weird because I was born with asthma. My mom was like, no, you weren't. I was like, what? So then I got my immunization records later, found out I wasn't diagnosed with asthma until after a round of vaccines that I had received. Then I was like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong. So plus it's really fascinating. You know what I mean? It is kind of, because you learn, I've learned a lot about law, a lot about medicine, a lot about science, a lot about human nature. I've connected to the most amazing people. It sent me down the road to natural health, which has enabled me to heal stuff. But at that time, when I first started, I didn't consider myself an anti-vaxxer. Now I'm like totally anti-vax. What are your thoughts? We've talked about this, but what are your thoughts on the people that want to say, oh, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm pro-information, or I'm not, I want to make vaccines safer. What are your thoughts on that?
My position on that is that those are the very people that are trying to straddle the two worlds, and they're trying to stay on the fence in the middle. And to me, I see that as pandering to the pharma gods. So in other words, they're saying, oh, we're not against vaccines. We just want safer vaccines. So that's what they're saying, right? Yeah. But really what they're doing is they're crawling on their knees and on their stomachs, begging the pharma gods, please stop killing so many of our children, and we promise we won't come for your profits. That's what they're saying. Don't worry about us. We're not trying to dip into your profits. Just please, we're begging you, stop killing so many of us.
Do you think though, because I have a few thoughts on this, because I think we're in the same, we have the same position, but I also think that people are so ignorant of their own bodies and their own immune system that we are also being coerced into still thinking we need vaccines because of fear. And people don't understand how your immune system works. They're going to think, well, we need something so we don't get sick or so we don't die. Do you think that's a huge part of it? Just the ignorance that people have about their own bodies and the low self-esteem that we don't have, that we've been manipulated into this mindset that we have lost esteem and the faith and the knowledge that our bodies can actually heal ourselves if we're given the right environment and the right supplementation and nutrition to do so.
A lot of the brainwashing that I see is extremely intentional and so outlandish and outrageous that I recently looked at the official health department for the country of Australia. I went over and looked at their website because they had a section called Dispelling Myths about vaccination. And the very first thing it said up there, they said it was a myth to believe that your body is capable of mounting an immune defense to any disease unless you've been vaccinated for it.
Oh, hell no.
They actually, no. Number one myth, they wanted to make people sure nobody believed anymore, and yet it's the truth. But so it's so upside down and backwards. And the way people's minds work that are deep into this brainwashing, they could turn on their TV and they could be watching CNN, one of these, and they could tell them, look, it's raining outside. And they could look out their window and see that it's sunny, but they're still going to believe the TV. They're going to put a rain jacket on. They're going to go outside and go, well, I guess I do feel kind of moist. CNN. They trust their own eyes. Yeah. And people are so far out of touch with their bodies nowadays. Yeah. They think that that the only way to live is to constantly see doctors, and that somehow makes you healthier, when the evidence is showing that the more money we spend on so-called healthcare, the sicker we get.
I have people writing me and commenting in my section telling me that they think that the Black Plague was stopped by vaccines. I was like, I'm like, they weren't like even inventing it. I swear. I had people like, you want the plague to come back? Like, if it wasn't for vaccines, we'd all be dead of the Black Plague. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, I really hope you're like 10. I hope you're a 10-year-old and not like a grown adult like writing this, because seriously, like that's how people, huh?
They've corrupted our educational system so badly. They've denied children a basic understanding about our own nation and its founding and our Constitution. They're weeding out learning how to read and write in cursive. I believe it's partly because they don't want anyone to be able to read the original Constitution and Declaration of Independence.
Oh, that's a good, I can see that. Yeah.
But they're rewriting history. They're demonizing America. They're saying just because there were some crazy ass things that were happening as we tried to become a better nation, all the way back to, brutalizing the indigenous Indian people. Because those things happened, we shouldn't want the Constitution. The Constitution represents, like I even remember Barack Obama saying that the Constitution was responsible for slavery in the United States. And I'm like, no, it was the Constitution that ended slavery, because it was like, hey, wait a minute, we're all created equal. That's written in the Constitution. That was the thing that the Union was able to press as the absolute moral high ground that they stood on to get rid of slavery, and yet we've got people brainwashing our nation to want communism and to shred our Constitution and say that it's a racist document or it's this or
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And how do the kids know any better? They can't read the darn thing. Half of them can't read anything, cursive or otherwise.
Yeah, well, they're having people emojis. Yeah. I hate emojis. I try, even when I'm texting right now, I try and like text what I say instead of putting like a picture, just because I don't want to
use the English language.
Yeah. The English language
are the tools of thought. Yeah. And when you start deleting words from our language and perverting what the words even mean, like the word liberal, I support the Constitution and I'm called a conservative because of that. But people, actually, the most liberal people I meet nowadays are Trump supporters.
Yeah.
Control freaks. They're called liberals, but they're the ones that want to control everything. They want government to control everything. They don't want us to have any free speech. They don't want us to have the right to self-defense. These are their positions on all of these issues, and yet they're called liberals. It's all backwards.
Yeah. It's like, it's insane. But just before I want to start wrapping up, but I wanted to ask you, how did you come to this? Like, were you always, critical of vaccination, or do you have a story yourself that got you on this path? I'm always interested to know what starts people on this path.
I grew up in a family that did not trust doctors in general. We only used them to set a bone or, stitches or something. But just in general, didn't like pharmaceuticals, didn't like vaccines, and didn't trust any of them. So there was always that kind of suspicion, and that kind of mostly was my father.
So you're not vaccinated?
Oh, the school got me. Back when I was a kid,
oh, no.
They were mandating them.
It's like body snatchers.
Yeah. And they weren't telling the parents even to get permission. So they would just have a government troop show up in a bus and run the kids through. We'd all line up and boom, boom, boom. I didn't get some of the other ones, though, because when my dad and my mom found out what they had done, they put a special thing in that you can't inject our kid anymore. and that got respected. Or maybe they kept us home from school that day. I can't remember which, but they didn't get the full. They only got one into me. And
Do you know what you had? Do you know which one?
no, I don't. But I do know this. Right after that, my tonsils swelled up and I almost died. And I had to get them removed. And because they swelled up so big that it was closing my air, I couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. And that was like right after that. And then for years I had ear infections. But previous to that, no health problems, So I had two daughters, home births, didn't want them vaccinated. During the custody battle, their dad got them a couple of shots, but they're generally healthy.
Oh, and that sucks. A lot of parents do that too. They use the pro-vaccine angle to get back at the other one. That's abominable, but that happens.
Well, It's like, I'm mad at you, so I'm going to hurt the babies.
Yeah, I know. That's ridiculous, but yeah.
I'm going to hurt you, but I can't hurt you directly anymore, so I'm going to hurt the kids. So, yeah. But I did home birth. Like the first one, I had a midwife, and then the second one, I didn't even want her back because I didn't want any interference. Because
you're like, I got this.
It's like whisper words of wisdom. Let it be. Let it be. You know what? And you think about like indigenous people, they just go into the lake and have the baby and it's done. Like no, and I know like I've gone a little bit down this path. I have a friend that's a midwife. Having women on her back while she's giving birth is just like just that right there.
Counterintuitive,
Well, and the thing is, something as innocuous as popping the water bag during labor. So it can actually lead to the death of the baby and or the mother. Something that simple. You'd think that what could that do? That couldn't hurt anybody. And then you hear, well, but my water bag popped when I was, and then that's what put me into labor. But in every one of those cases, what you find out is that shortly before that the water bag popped, they had seen the doctor. And he stripped those membranes during the exam because he's scheduling her birth.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
Right.
Well, they have scheduled cesareans now.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I remember I couldn't say anything because it was like, and I was talking to my mom. My mom was like, her baby, her child. I was like, I know, but my cousin's wife was scheduled for a cesarean. I was like, they were like, she's having a baby on Tuesday. I was like, oh, her due date's on Tuesday? They're like, no, she's going in and they're having a cesarean. I was like, are you kidding me?
I know, so risky, and they use cesarean. Here's an interesting factoid. Okay, so a breech birth where the feet are coming out first is slightly higher risk than head first. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit riskier. So if you're just having a natural birth and the feet come out first, it's a little riskier, okay? Just a little. However, it's not nearly as risky as a cesarean. Cesarean in and of itself, no matter why they're doing it, has really huge, massive risks associated with it for both the mother and the child. And yet, even though the risk of a breech birth is much, much lower than risks associated with the procedure of cesarean, guess what the solution always is 100 times?
Cesarean.
100% of the time when you're having a breech, cesarean. Even though it's safer. The numbers prove that it's safer. Oh, another interesting study I saw, which helped me decide that I would have my children at home, was where they took all high-risk pregnancies and they followed them through birth. And there was a certain group of them that didn't make it to the doctor in time, right? And so even though all of the pregnancies were high risk, the ones that had the baby away from a doctor, much higher survival rate, much lower injury rate for both the mother and the baby than the ones who made it to the doctor. So in other words, they'd have the baby in the car or on a bus or a train or even sometimes in the elevator in the hospital trying to get to the operating room. And they would have the baby there, and the baby was better off, and so was the mother, than if they made it into the butcher's shop.
But you don't see deers going to get cesareans and monkeys and You know what I mean? They're just like over it. I'm not over it, but it's like, you know,
just be alone.
we're mammals. They're trying to take all of that away from us. They're trying to say that, you know, breast milk is bad and breastfeeding is bad. They're trying to get people on formula, which also impairs people's immune system. And then when they do get vaccinated, it makes them higher risk of getting injured because, you know, they don't have that those nutrients or the protection.
I love this when, you know, here you are, the woman, and you grew this baby, and then you went, and you screamed and you grunted and you pushed it into this damn world, and someone else jumps in and says, I delivered her baby.
Yeah, like, no.
I did that.
Yeah, totally.
That offended me when the midwife, that was a little bit of the reason I didn't want her back, because she's like, I delivered your baby. No, you didn't. I got it out of there just fine, and I would have done it without you, and next time I am.
Yeah, totally. Well, Joy, like, I guess I'm going to wrap it up. Where could we find you? I'm going to put your info in the links as well. Is there anything else you want to wrap up and say, or anything else you want to promote?
Anyone out there that's watching this, if you are unvaccinated, or you know anyone that's unvaccinated, they need to go to the controlgroup.org, download the survey. We do need hard copies mailed to us because we're using this for court. We're going to stop these vaccine mandates. We're going into court for a nationwide injunction against the vaccine mandates. We've had a delay on our filing date, which actually turned out to be good. We're continuing to get more surveys in, and we're getting much better legal support than we were even hoping we would ever have access to. And so we're extending the study for a few more months. Please go to thecontrolgroup.org, download the survey. Even if you are vaccinated or your children are vaccinated and you don't qualify for the survey, get on our mailing list. Watch what we're up to. Be a part of spreading awareness about this, because the more attention there is on this case when it goes to court, the harder it's going to be for them to pull dirty tricks on us. Yeah. So support us in whatever way you can, and spread the word to other people that you know of or that you suspect might have unvaccinated children. If they're worried about identifying themselves, they can do the survey anonymously, and it is still admissible in court. We need as many as we can get. We already have a lot, but the bigger our sampling rate is, the better evidence it's going to make in court. That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Don't hang up after this. I'm just going to sign up, though. But thanks for reaching out to me. So glad we connected. And all right, guys, that's it. I will talk to you later. Peace and love. Bye-bye. Mwah. Hold on a second. Okay.